Welcome to this explainer. We're diving straight into a topic that's practically inescapable lately, Web3. Usually this stuff is just buried under a massive mountain of coding jargon, but today, we're going to completely demystify it. By the end of this visual roadmap, I promise, you definitely won't need a computer science degree to understand the future of the internet. Let's get right into it.
Here's our step-by-step agenda to navigate this safely. We'll cover the shift from reading to owning, the pillars of Web3, demystifying the actual tech, the opportunities and risks, and finally, starting your journey safely.
All right, part one, from reading to owning.
To really get what Web3 is, we kind of have to anchor ourselves in the familiar, you know? Let's look at how the internet actually got to where it is today. Think of Web 1, back in the 90s, as a static digital library. You basically just went there to read information. Then came Web 2 in the mid-2000s, the whole social media boom. Suddenly you could write and interact. But it was kind of like building this massive, successful shop on rented land. You created all the value, sure, but the big platforms own the land and made the rules. Now enter Web 3. We're finally adding the concept of ownership to the mix. It's read, write, and actually own your digital assets.
And this builds into a massive paradigm shift. In traditional centralized systems, think banks, big tech, governments, they hold your data and your money. If their server crashes, or they just decide to change the rules, you're completely stuck. Contrast that with a decentralized system. Here, the control is distributed across thousands of users' computers worldwide. There's no single authority that can just arbitrarily shut you down or lock you out.
Moving right along, part 2, the pillars of Web3.
Now that we've seen that major shift from centralized to decentralized, let's look at the foundational blueprint. Web3 is essentially built on a rule of three. First up, ownership. You actually control your digital life. Your assets and your identity belong to you. Second is decentralization. Power is spread out across the entire network, not just sitting in some corporate headquarters. And third, permissionless access. You literally don't need a gatekeeper's approval to participate. Anyone with an internet connection, anywhere in the world, can jump in.
Okay, part 3, demystifying the technology.
You've probably heard a ton of intimidating buzzwords floating around. So let's break down the actual engine driving all this, starting with the foundation itself, blockchain. Look, a blockchain isn't magic. It is simply a shared digital notebook. Imagine you and 10 friends share a notebook, and every single time money moves, everybody writes it down. If one person tries to cheat and erase a line, the other 9 notebooks instantly reveal the truth. Blockchain just takes that exact concept and scales it up to thousands of computers globally, completely removing the need to trust a middleman.
And running right on top of that shared notebook is cryptocurrency. This is digitally secured value that you can transfer directly, peer-to-peer, anywhere in the world, almost instantly. It completely bypasses those expensive, painfully slow banking delays we're all so used to.
But you know, that brings up a really great question. How do you actually execute agreements or do business without a lawyer, an agent, or a bank sitting right in the middle taking their cut?
The absolute perfect way to understand smart contracts is to think of a digital vending machine. You walk up, insert your money, select a product, the machine verifies the funds, and bam, it automatically releases the bottle. A smart contract is literally just an automated program that does exactly this. It instantly releases a digital product or funds once payment is verified. Zero human intervention, zero paperwork, and absolutely zero lawyers taking a cut.
Now consider the difference between a simple dollar bill and a unique piece of art. Cash is fungible. If we trade $1 bills, we both still hold the exact same value. But a house, or a specific one-of-a-kind painting, those are non-fungible. They're completely unique. You can't just casually swap my house for yours and call it even.
And that brings us to NFTs, or non-fungible tokens. Please, whatever you do, don't just think of them as those hyped-up, expensive JPEGs you see on social media. An NFT is actually a revolutionary digital certificate recorded on a blockchain. It conclusively proves your authentic ownership of a unique digital asset, and that could be anything from fine art to a VIP concert ticket to an immutable educational credential.
Rounding out our tech glossary is the DAO, a decentralized autonomous organization. Imagine taking a traditional corporate ladder, the CEO, the board, the middle managers, and completely replacing it with a shared community. Members actually propose and vote on decisions collectively. And those smart contracts we just talked about, they automatically execute whatever the community decides. It's wild.
Which brings us to part 4, opportunities and real risks.
With all that theory out of the way, it's definitely time for a reality check. Web3 is a high-stakes environment, but the opportunities are genuinely life-changing, especially for emerging markets. We're talking about true financial inclusion for billions of unbanked people who now just need a basic internet connection to participate. A developer in Nigeria can have borderless access to global clients, and creators, they can finally monetize directly without platform gatekeepers taking a massive chunk of their revenue.
But, and this is a massive but, we have to look closely at the very real dangers here, because ignoring them is absolutely the fastest way to lose everything. This space is heavily rife with scams, fake projects, and phishing attacks. Market volatility is frankly extreme. And crucially, because you are acting as your own bank, a single mistake, like losing your private key, means your assets are gone forever. There's no password reset button here. There's no customer service desk you can call to fix it.
Because of those intense risks, you must never rush in blinded by the hype. In the world of Web3, knowledge is often way more valuable than capital. A person armed with solid education has a massive unfair advantage over someone acting purely out of FOMO. Which leads us to our final section, Part 5, starting your journey safely.
So how do you actually take those very first practical steps into this ecosystem? Well, the beginner's playbook is pretty strict. First, build a solid foundation of learning before you spend a single dollar. Next, set up a Web3 wallet, but, and I cannot stress this enough, guard your private recovery phrase like your life depends on it. Never share it. When you do start small with tiny amounts. Treat those early steps as your tuition. And always, always do your own research rather than just blindly following the crowd.
The ultimate takeaway from this explainer is that Web3 is simply not a get-rich-quick race. Actually, scratch that. It's the exact opposite. Real growth takes time. This is a long-term educational journey that requires real discipline, skill development, and incredible patience. The most successful participants here, they are almost always the most patient.
Web3 is fundamentally redefining digital ownership, community, and opportunity as we know it. The internet's next chapter is literally being written right now. Which leaves us with one final vital question to think about. Are you ready to put in the time to learn, adapt, and responsibly own your piece of the future internet?